What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, we've been waiting for this one for a couple of weeks now, but had to get our ducks in order, ready to do it now. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to have some new schedules. And while it's not confirmed the format that they are going to have, writing's on the wall. Right. It's going to be a 3-6-6 model. So we're going to go through and try to pick the three rivals for each new SEC and new Big Ten team starting in 2024. This is a great time to follow us on YouTube, youtube.com/@the-extra-point-pod, because we're actually going to I'll share my screen here. You can visually see what we're looking at schedule-wise while we're choosing these permanent rivals. So this might take us a minute, Daniel. So, well, not really. We'll see. We might have some healthy debate as far as which teams are going to get which teams. But, Daniel, I know this is a topic you've been really excited about. You put some stuff out on Twitter a couple weeks ago, getting some feedback from different fan bases. And this is an exciting topic.
Yeah, this is one where, I mean, it's something that is tangible that we're going to probably get a hold of this offseason prior, at least – before potentially the media day circuit for both SEC and Big Ten prior to, because next season, 2024 season is when all of this stuff's going to be implemented. And both of these conferences like to get their schedule out in the open come fall time. So like to have it a year in advance. So you'll definitely, I think we'll see some traction, and it's just kind of fun to speculate. You and I, the two models that have been talked about specifically for the SEC the most, because they're right now an 8-game conference schedule, is the 1-7 model. If they're going to preserve the 8-game conference schedule where it's 1 permanent opponent, 7 rotating opponents, versus the 3-6 model where it's 3 permanent opponents and then rotate the other 6. That would be moving to a 9-game conference schedule. The SEC has been the last major conference to do so. So we'll see if that's something. It's been going back and forth. So, but once you start looking into these rivalries, which we're about to dive into, it's hard to only have one permanent rival per school, especially for a few different schools. So I'm excited to look at this. And I like that we're going to kind of take a nuanced approach to this. We're looking at it from different angles with putting our different hats on for each team.
That was a layup. That was a nice transition and set up. So
it's like we've been doing this for a minute, right?
I almost just went with it, and I was like, no, I need to call that out. That was really good. So here's the lenses that you and I are going to look through. So we have started with number 1 for both conferences. What are the must-have? These games are happening, period. And again, we're going with the 3-6-6 model because we'll start with, for example, you got a team like Alabama, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to play Auburn every year.
Right.
They're going to play Tennessee every year. The SEC went with their permanent opponent cross-divisionally because of the Alabama-Tennessee and the Georgia-Auburn rivalries. Right. So the reason we're saying they're going to go with 3-6-6 is because you're not going to take Tennessee away from Alabama. You're not going to take Auburn away from Georgia and vice versa. So that's how we're going with the 3-6-6. So we started with, and we'll show it here in a minute, what are the games that we know without a doubt are happening? All right.
Right.
Then we're going to go through and put our, our Greg Sankey hat on, or our whoever the Big Ten president's going to be hat on, and ask the schools, well, who do you prefer? We're going to attempt to give everyone at least their first choice. So everyone's going to have say in who they want to play.
Right.
But here's the deal, Daniel. For the Big Ten and for the SEC, they've just signed new TV contracts. And if you think that these TV partners are not going to have a say in these new schedules, you're wrong. I mean, You're talking $1 billion deal the Big Ten just signed. That billion with a B. That's a lot of money. So a lot of zeros. So they're going to have a say in who these schools play. So that's going to be our second filter. So first filter, preference. Second filter, TV money. Third filter, we're going to attempt to put some competitive balance. But again, that's coming after TV deals, because we also have to think about next year when these schedules go into place, we have the expanded college football playoff. So there is less incentive to win every game because of how many slots are available. So like you have room to lose a game. So stacking your schedule with a bunch of good teams, and again, this is only 3 permanent rivals. You're still gonna have to play everyone every 2 years, so not
Yeah.
really a big deal to like stack the rivals, so to speak.
Yeah, I was
So
gonna say that's the exact point. The competitive balance is only to a point because I think there is a chance that, I mean, even if there's somewhat of a stacked group of three that you're playing, I mean, you're still gonna rotate on six other teams, and not everybody is a world beater. You're going to be able to find some wins other places on the schedule. So I like to think about the middle and bottom tier teams. Like they're going to, if they have to play in Alabama or Georgia or LSU, they're still going to get some other like schools where they can kind of, have a chance to get those wins on a regular basis. So,
and everyone's gonna play Vanderbilt and Indiana at least every other year. No offense to those
yeah.
schools. So that's okay. Hey, we went over on Vandy's win total, so we'll just see what it is this year. If it's
Friend
getting
of the
too
show,
high,
Barton Simmons, friend of the
that's
show.
right. That's right. I'll start making I don't know, Missouri jokes instead. Sorry, Missouri. So Daniel, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and show the games we have absolutely started with, and if you're listening on podcast, I will read it out so that you can attempt to follow along. A lot easier for this episode to follow us on YouTube, so you can see what we're looking at. So here's the games we started with. Our foundation: Alabama. You've got Auburn and Tennessee. No foundation games for Arkansas. We've got Auburn. Sorry, I just said that one. Iron Bowl is already on there. Deep South's oldest rivalry, Auburn, Georgia, is on there. Excuse me, Florida, Georgia is on there. Egg Bowl is on there. The Red River Shootout, Oklahoma, Texas. We've got Texas and Texas A&M. That one I'm already. Here's the
Oh,
thing:
yeah.
is A&M. I don't think wants to doesn't care if this game comes back every year. At least they're going to say they don't care, because they're still butthurt about the Longhorn Network. But this is where we can go ahead and put that on the foundation because ESPN didn't pay 300 mil for A&M in Texas and not play every year. Uh,
Right.
so that's happening. So here's where we're starting. Then let's just start at the top of the list and go down. I have some separate notes over here. If you're Arkansas, who is your first choice to play?
So I think Arkansas. So this one's tough because before this week, I would think Arkansas cared more about LSU, but now I am leaning Texas. I think that Arkansas, because of the history, Southwest Conference, just the whole everything, I think that Arkansas would want to play Texas the most. So I would say Texas.
I agree with you. I'm going Texas. And what's fun about that is you have your first team, it's done. I think Texas is the easiest team in the new schedule. As far as I would put a lot of money on the fact that they're going to play Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Arkansas every year. Some context, I do have pulled up historically what games have been played the most. And for Arkansas, actually, they've played Texas more than any other school ever. So,
Oh, wow.
of course, that was a Southwest Conference rivalry, but even adding the SEC schools, actually Texas and Texas A&M are tied for most games played against Arkansas. Ole Miss being third. So, as far as just historical context goes, I agree with you. I think Texas, so Arkansas has got their first choice, and I did skip Alabama because obviously they already got their preference with the Auburn game. Same thing with Auburn. Same thing with Florida and Georgia. Here's a fun one: Kentucky. If you're Kentucky, what is your preference on who you want to play?
If I'm Kentucky, I want to play Tennessee. That's
Yeah.
who I would want to play every year. I think regionally it makes sense. They're a border state, um, and so yeah, if it's me, Kentucky,
What's fun
Tennessee.
about this is if you ask Tennessee fans who are your biggest rivals, it's probably somewhat in this order: Bama, uh, Florida, or Georgia. I think you can go back and forth there depending on who you ask.
Hmm.
But Florida and Georgia are two or three. you're not going to get Kentucky in the top 3. But if you ask Kentucky football fans, who's your biggest
Right.
rival? It's Tennessee. They've also played the game 118 times, hardly missing any year. So I think that one's locked down. Tennessee, you're getting Kentucky, even if you don't think they're your biggest rival. Kentucky, it's their biggest rival. So that's their preference. They're getting Tennessee. LSU, Daniel. This one's fun because, historically, I can tell you who they've played the most, but I don't think who they've played the most is, if you're LSU, who you want necessarily.
For me, I originally said, again, I was on that LSU Arkansas thing. I talked to people with LSU, 2 different sides of the fan base. Both told me that they do not care about Arkansas. Now, granted, that may be because Arkansas sneaks up and beats them every now and again, and they don't want to deal with the ramifications of that. I mean, I'm a big brand guy. I would go Alabama. I think LSU Bama is a big deal. This very closely for me, LSU Florida, but come to find out, LSU and Florida don't care a whole lot about. They don't like each other, but that's kind of I would go LSU and Bama for this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think LSU is going to say, you got to think too. One, LSU thinks and knows they can beat Alabama. I mean, they beat them this past season. You got to think, if you're the school too, ticket sales, right? What's gonna drive people to buy season tickets? And playing Bama every year guarantees you every other year you've got a Bama home game, and also TV partners. We haven't gotten to that filter yet, but this is one of those games that TV partners are going to say. I mean, think about how often CBS chooses the Alabama LSU game as their game of the week, and then even how often they've chosen it as their 8 p.m. game, that one game per year they play at 8 p.m.
Right, right. This is like prime time flex all the way.
Right.
I think it's safe to say that game is going to get played because it matters to LSU, it matters to Alabama for as much as that is worth, and like you said, the TV partners. I think if you talk about premier matchups across any league, that's as good as it gets. That's as far as a regular season matchup, you're
Yep.
always going to have all eyes on that game.
Yep. Completely agree. Okay. Missouri. This one I think is easy to me, but where are you going if you're Missouri?
Let's see. I have Oklahoma down.
Yeah. So of the schools in the SEC, they've played Oklahoma the most, with 96 times, and this is a historic rivalry. If you ask Missouri fans, like, Kansas and Oklahoma are 2 historic rivalries for this program. The next highest is Texas, and they've played them 24 times to Oklahoma's 96. So,
Wow, that's a big
big
gap.
discrepancy. I think that one's easy. So Missouri getting Oklahoma, that adds Missouri to Oklahoma schedule. Boom. All right. So Mississippi State already had Ole Miss. Ole Miss already had Mississippi State. We're down to South Carolina. If you are South Carolina, who is your first choice? This is a fun one, kind of similar to Kentucky.
Yeah, this one you and I have both been. We see this one clearly. This never been a doubt for us, but South Carolina is going to want to play Georgia. That's their most natural rival.
Yep.
The border bash, as it's called, over close to the line, the Georgia South Carolina line. You look at the Georgia one, Florida and Auburn, very obvious. Usually, like what you were saying with Tennessee, Tennessee would probably pick Georgia or Florida as their next one. Georgia would probably pick. Honestly, they'd probably pick Tennessee
over South Carolina.
Over South Carolina. But
yeah,
if you're talking about not only this also goes into competitive balance to a certain extent, but yeah, if you're putting on that South Carolina hat, I mean, they want to play Georgia every year, which it's their only natural rivalry within the SEC. The rest of obviously they have Clemson out of conference. The rest of the league, I mean, it's kind of more of a medium interest. So yeah, this one's slam dunk.
Yeah, I think so too. That's their number one choice. So they're getting Georgia. Last team that doesn't have their preference yet, Vanderbilt. I mean, are you going Tennessee if you're Vandy? Is this keep your in-state rival?
I would think so. I would think they want to play Tennessee.
So with this, let's review. So every school has now gotten at least their first preference. All right.
Mhm.
So we've got 4 schools finished out so far. Those are Alabama. You've got Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU as your permanent rivals. Georgia. You've got Florida, Auburn, and South Carolina. Tennessee. You've got Alabama, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. Texas. You've got Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. And just looking at this 4 so far, Tennessee, big winner.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you say that in recent years, Kentucky, much harder game, but if you're talking about a perennial powerhouse, they definitely only have to play Alabama. And so they are going to luck out with losing Georgia every single year, playing them every other year, playing Florida every other year. So Tennessee definitely the best of this group as far as what they've lucked out at.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead and switch hats here. We've put on our school hats. We got our preference. Now is when ESPN sitting at the table, and you've got I don't know who the TV partner or producer is at ESPN who would be sitting at the table, but we'll just imagine that it's Kirk Herbstreit sitting there. I know it's not him, but he's like, all right, now it's our turn, and this is where big brands are gonna stick out. And again, competitive balance not as important as viewers. This college football is an entertainment industry. So I'd like to fill out Daniel. I'd like for everyone to have at least 2 so that we don't get stuck here at the end and some teams are having to play each other twice. Because I did this exercise the other day and I got through and 2 teams had 2 slots left. And I was like, well, they're not going to play each other back to back. Like,
Right.
oops. So let's go down the list here and try to find some TV partner games here. Give everyone at least 2 games. Here's the deal. I'm skipping Arkansas because
Yeah.
I'm talking about viewers here. Florida needs a second game. Now, if you're the TV partner, who are some ideas for Florida that's going to make it a big game?
So Florida, I've got the there's 3 teams that I think would bring in the most,
Yeah.
and that would be Texas A&M, LSU, or Auburn.
Mm,
I think for me, I think at this
do it.
point, I'd like to see Auburn.
Yes. Okay.
I'd like to see Auburn and Florida.
This is a rivalry that I want back. So, again, looking historically, Florida has played Auburn outside of Georgia more than anyone else in the SEC 84 times. Now, this is an old rivalry, and this is including the fact that they haven't played every year since like the 90s. So, like, we saw how big this game was. Was it 2019 when they played this game in Gainesville? Yeah, it
Yes,
was. He was Kyle Trask. Yeah,
it's 2020, but
2020.
he
No, no,
played
no.
part of
It
2019 too. He got hurt. He came in
yeah,
for Felipe in 2019.
but I say it was full stadium for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, this was a game that I was hoping would come up because this is a game I was going to fight to bring back. That's an easy decision for me. I'm doing it. We're putting Auburn in Florida schedule, and Auburn. Sorry, your every year opponents are now Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. That's just the price of being a big brand in
Yeah.
this new conference schedule. So love that. Love that we brought that rivalry back. Okay. LSU. Now here's
Yes.
where I know what school here. I've got a couple schools here that I think viewership wise. And then I've got a school I think Ole Miss wants to play, which is going to come second. Excuse me. Oh, well, they just gave it away. I think Ole Miss is a school LSU wants to play. But I mean, viewership wise, are we going? I mean, A&M.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So the people I've talked to, because I had the basically on the chopping block as my last LSU game was either between LSU playing Texas A&M or LSU playing Arkansas. I bailed on the A&M rivalry thinking that they wanted Arkansas. I got a bunch of feedback from the LSU faithful and Tiger droppings and everywhere in between saying, "We don't care about Arkansas. We want to play Texas A&M. We don't like those guys." So I think the hatred, and which is the whole part of a permanent rival, I think A&M makes sense. A&M is also, I think, in a couple of instances we're going to see in a later one, A&M's just got so much cachet at this point. brand wise because of being able to beat Alabama. Jimbo Fisher, big name. They got big Texas money, and then I mean this whole Texas A&M thing is just going to be phenomenal. And then you add to it the layer of NIL, them paying all the players and stuff. I think this brand carries a lot of weight, and so them versus LSU, it's also so natural with like proximity to each other. This is the one we've got to see every year.
Completely agree. Uh, and if you're A&M, I think what A&M is going to complain about in the room is if the SEC walks in and they're like, hey, your games are now Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, Missouri, whatever. And it's going to be like, what the heck? We left the Big 12. Like, we're an
Right.
SEC school now. This gives them, like, hey, you have a big time SEC school
SEC blue
as
blood right here.
right,
Yeah.
right, as a permanent rival. I think that is an excellent idea. Okay, we've gotten and again, this is no offense if you're a fan of these teams. This is just how TV is looking at it. We've gotten the big boys out of the way. We got the viewership out of the way. Let's go back up to Arkansas. Daniel, what do you think about giving A&M to Arkansas, keeping this rivalry as a permanent rivalry?
I like it. The only other place I was going to put A&M would be Oklahoma,
Okay.
but I do think that because this rivalry is played, it's even a neutral site rivalry game. It's been so close, and I think the history can outweigh it. And A&M and Oklahoma obviously haven't played for years, anyways. They can rotate every other year, and it'll be just fine. But
Yeah,
that's the two I had this narrowed down to for Texas A&M. I had them either playing Oklahoma or Arkansas as their final game.
I'm with you. Those are my two as well. I'm leaning Arkansas from the Arkansas side. I think because I think if you're there's still room for LSU here, but I think we might go a different direction with LSU. We'll see. Uh, I think if you're Arkansas, you want to keep A&M or LSU, and if LSU doesn't really care, I think A&M cares about that game. I mean, look at how many fans show up to that game, like
Yeah,
split down the middle in Dallas, which is really cool. I hope it goes to a home and home. But also add again most played games historically. Texas A&M tie with Texas for most played game for Arkansas. Uh, you want to try it? A&M for Arkansas.
yeah, let's do it.
So that also closes out A&M. And again, A&M is going to be very pleased here because they got they didn't get just all their Big 12 buddies on their
Yeah,
schedule. Um,
and the one that we need them to have is Texas, which we took care of that right out of the gate.
yeah,
And then the other two being, these other games. I think this is a good balance and it's good viewership because you know Texas, Texas A&M, and Arkansas playing each other. I
yeah.
think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, we got to give everyone else a second game. Kentucky. Here's how I think Kentucky's going to want to play here. And we can see if TV can agree again because Kentucky's not the biggest viewership. I don't think it really matters, but um, Vanderbilt they've played a ton, and again, like border school there, they've played Vanderbilt 95 times. Georgia they've played the third most. That's not an option here, so we can give them Vandy, and that would give Vandy a close rival as well. And again, you're kind of separating the teams here as far as like Vandy would then have Tennessee, Kentucky, and Kentucky's got Tennessee, Vandy, um, almost like a pod there. I don't know. Vandy, do you go like a South Carolina?
So
Mississippi State's
here's
been their West opponent.
here's something I've thought about. What about Florida, Kentucky, and Florida? I've been thinking about Florida with some other schools. I mean, like South Carolina comes to mind as a potential. Obviously, LSU, that natural rivalry. Um, you know, but I think Florida could also fit in nice playing Kentucky every year.
My only pushback on Florida is, I mean, again, if I'm putting my TV head on, is
Right?
I want those eyes. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at Oklahoma with an open slot, which seems crazy. That could be a permanent rival, but I mean, money talks. I'm sitting here, like you said, LSU. So I'm like, and then if we're going back to preference, South Carolina, that's another close school to South Carolina. I don't know. I like Kentucky. Florida's been really fun in the last 4 years, and not fun at all before the last 4 years.
That's true. It can rotate. You've talked me out of it. So Florida will save. Kentucky, I think Vanderbilt is one of those last two
Yeah.
regardless for Kentucky, so we can go ahead and move Vandy to play Kentucky.
All right. You got Mississippi State, Missouri. I'll start with Mississippi State. I think, it sucks that they're not going to get Bama every year, only because those are actually the closest two SEC schools distance wise. They're 83 miles apart. So closest to, but that's not happening because Bama's getting
They're
a
full.
loaded schedule.
They'll play every other year. That's the thing I have to keep reminding myself. A lot of these I get worried about them not playing it every year.
Yeah.
But it's like that's what this permanent opponent thing is for.
Right.
It's for the ones you want without a shadow of a doubt every single year. So they'll be fine. I jokingly was like, let's just have Mississippi State and Ole Miss play 3 times a year. That'll be fine. Once in the beginning of the year, once in the middle, once at the end. This is tough though, because you have to really decide, are you going to, have maybe a non-natural rival? Are you going to have, a team that they've played a ton?
I've got an idea.
Go for it.
LSU. They've actually played the most out of, LSU has played Mississippi State 116 times. They've played every year for the last 116 years. Or 120 minus World War II or something like that. So that would be my, if we're filling it out at this point, LSU's already got Bama and A&M. So you've got eyes on it. It gives Mississippi State a big boy in their schedule. It also offers some competitive balance, which is, again, the third filter. But
yeah,
I think it's a natural fit.
I was going to say either Ole Miss or Mississippi State needs to play LSU. So I'm good with Mississippi State if that's where we want to go.
Yeah, well, man, I really want to give Ole Miss to LSU. That's my...
Well, let's come back to it.
Okay. Missouri. I think Missouri is the more tough one. That's where I almost want to give them like a Kentucky or no, sorry. Arkansas is what I want to give Missouri.
Yeah.
I like that one.
That one's been somewhat of their natural rival recently.
Yeah.
I did get some Arkansas people clapping back at me wanting to play Missouri.
Okay.
So I think that kind of, scratches a little bit of the itch, even though Arkansas won't play LSU every year. At least they get Missouri.
There you go. Okay. We've got Mississippi State, Ole Miss, South Carolina. Is this where South Carolina is going to play Kentucky and
Florida?
Or Florida? I think
South Carolina plays Florida.
I think so too. That's a good call there. That finishes out Florida. That's been a good one
for Florida.
Okay, so if you're Mississippi State, I'll say this. I think if we're giving Ole Miss a second opponent, I think Vandy and Ole Miss. So that's actually their second most played game behind LSU is Vanderbilt. And same for Vanderbilt. It's their second most played game. And also proximity, because Ole Miss is that northern part of Mississippi and Nashville, of course, and West Tennessee.
That makes sense. I like it.
So that solves that one. But I still don't want to take Ole Miss LSU off the table yet.
No, it's not off the table by any means. All right.
Mississippi State's going to be this awkward one, man.
It's always going to be awkward.
Did they get in Oklahoma and just welcome to SEC Oklahoma. You got to go play in Starkville.
Well, right
Kentucky?
now Oklahoma is playing 2 former Big 12 teams, so maybe it would be nice for them to play an SEC.
Oh yeah.
There's also the LSU Kentucky rivalry history.
There's some history there.
I've thought about that, but also the Ole Miss LSU. I know we're kind of building toward. Let's go ahead and do that. Ole Miss and LSU. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, let's finish her out.
We both want that to happen.
We both want it.
Go ahead and do it. I think that both schools would want it. Okay.
What about Kentucky, Mississippi State?
I think
that's their current West opponent.
Yeah, and I think Missouri can play South Carolina because they've been playing.
That's a good this is coming into shape here. Wait, we said Missouri.
Yeah, I don't feel I don't feel bad about those. Now Mississippi State's got to play both of those last two. They got to play Oklahoma and they got to play Kentucky.
I like it. This worked out. I like this schedule.
Yeah, because honestly, Oklahoma, some people might say that's a tough fit with Mississippi State and Oklahoma. Let's be honest. Anything was going to be weird for Mississippi State and Ole Miss to a certain extent because the obvious Egg Bowl rivalry, and then the rest of it, all the teams that they would, if they could pick other as a second and third option, are all first and second options of every other school. So
Yeah.
it's tough for both of those schools. The good news is any of those rivalries that we really want to sink our teeth into are going to get played every other year. No
Yep.
worries. But yeah, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, that has the making of what could be just an interesting twist on what's coming, what's new. Oklahoma has to feel lucky because they play Texas, which they were probably expecting they were always going to play. And if you told them that their draw was going to be Mississippi State and Missouri, which you think proximity wise, those two are both, not too bad away from them. It's not like they're coming all the way to the East Coast for a, every year game or something. So, but yeah, I like it. I like Mississippi State, Oklahoma. We'll see. We'll see how that matchup, flourishes if that's the case.
Love it. I love this list. So to wrap up the SEC, Alabama, you are playing Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU. Arkansas, you are playing Texas, Texas A&M, and Missouri. Auburn, you are playing Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. Florida is playing Georgia, Auburn, South Carolina. Georgia is playing Florida, Auburn, and South Carolina. Kentucky, it's got Tennessee, Vandy, Mississippi State. LSU playing Alabama, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss. Mississippi State playing Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and Kentucky. Missouri playing Oklahoma, Arkansas, and South Carolina. Oklahoma playing Texas, Missouri, Mississippi State. Ole Miss playing Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, LSU. South Carolina's got Georgia, Florida, and Missouri. Tennessee's got Alabama, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. Texas has got Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Arkansas. Texas A&M's got Texas, LSU, and Arkansas. And Vanderbilt's got Tennessee, Kentucky, Ole Miss. Daniel, honestly, I've seen a few versions of different schedules. I like ours the best so far. Missouri's the only weird one to me. Or excuse me, Mississippi State.
Yeah, I was going to say Missouri looks good. I think most of these people are using their own bias of what they want to see. I think by us compiling 3 things we've looked at where, every school gets their first choice, adding in the TV contract and then competitive balance. You and I both know this league well. I'm excited to see we're about to do Big Ten here in just a moment. We're about to swap over. You and I have grown up as in the SEC country, SEC fans in general. This one kind of felt, like our baby a little bit. So I think we knew. I'm excited to see what we do with the Big Ten. I do think we have a good grasp of what needs to be played every year. And I'm excited to see what we do. But I think you've got to take a holistic approach to these things for your list to come out looking good, because everybody and their brother has an opinion on what should happen. And I know I keep saying this over and over. A lot of SEC fans are probably going to get up in arms initially because they're going to see a school that they like to play not on their list of permanent opponent. But you just have to remember with this model, it is different from what the SEC has been doing where they rotate opponents once every like 7 years. Now it's every other year. So if you do not play, the Golden Boot isn't played this year, Arkansas, LSU, guess what? It's happening next year.
Right.
You're going to have it, twice in 4 years. So freshman will get to play if he stays 4 years. He'll get to play twice, and he'll get to play once at home, once away. So it's good. It's a good model.
And then some of those games might mean more, like because it's only every 2 years. And again, that's a great benefit of the new model is you're not losing the game. It's not like the current model where like Georgia has still not traveled to Texas A&M in the 11 years they've been in the SEC, which is crazy. That'll happen at least every 4 years in the new model, which is great. So,
yeah,
Daniel, let's move to the Big Ten. Here's the thing with the Big Ten. The Big Ten's got a lot of trophy games, and not all of them are going to get played. But not all of them get to get played every year, even now, like I think about Illinois, Ohio State, that is no longer a yearly game. But dude, they've played that game 103 times. It's the opponent that Illinois has played the most. They have the Eli Buck Trophy, and that game's not played every year. So we have to keep that in mind. But same thing, we have started with the rivalries that are just
That must
going
be
to
played.
happen, that
Right.
must be played. So we started with Illinois Northwestern, Indiana Purdue, Iowa Minnesota, Iowa Wisconsin. The game, Michigan State. Let's see, Minnesota Wisconsin. No, yeah, we've already said Minnesota Iowa. UCLA USC, and then Wisconsin. No, we already said that one. Just kidding.
Yeah.
No, twice. But so we've got a few games filled in here. Same thing. Let's start with preference with Maryland. And again, Maryland, one of these weird ones because they've only been in the Big Ten. I say only. It's been like a decade now, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
But it's funny, like a Big Ten, a conference full of games where you've played these teams over 100 times, multiple teams over 100 times. Maryland's most played game is Penn State, and it's 46 times. So, if you're Maryland, who do you want as your first choice?
I, nothing really makes a whole lot of sense. I would probably, I mean, I'd probably
I mean, I want Penn
lean
State.
Penn State, but yeah, let's go. Let's just do Penn State since that's who they've played the most.
And again, if you're Penn State, Maryland is in no way, shape, or form your number one choice, but it's Maryland's number one choice. So we're giving schools their preference here. Not everyone's going to get everything they want. Penn State, you will have your turn.
Well, are we still going to give Penn State their first choice
Yeah,
in a minute?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah. I'll make
okay.
sure that here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll put it
We're good.
here so that I'm not confused when I get down there. And again, if you're confused by me saying that, be sure to also subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/the at the extra point pod. YouTube changed their how they do their URLs. So youtube.com/the at the extra point pod. Goodness, I'll get it right eventually.
It's all
Uh,
good.
and you can see our schedule there. We're also going to post this on social media as a graphic at the extra point pod on Instagram, Facebook, and then we'll have it on our Twitters as well at Deep South Daniel, at Jacob Carnes. You'll hear that again before the end of the show.
Yes.
Nebraska.
I think
Nebraska's a
Iowa.
fun one. Do what?
Sorry, I jumped the gun. You're setting it up a little
No, no, no,
bit.
no. Go ahead.
Nebraska is a fun one. I think Iowa because Nebraska somewhat new-ish to the Big Ten. Was a bit a decade. They joined whenever Maryland joined, I guess. They're from the Big 12. They don't have a natural slam dunk rivalry. The Nebraska Iowa matchup of it being at least a good regional rivalry. I think that makes the most sense. Also, I'm consulting a Big Ten fan sent me his preferences, and his number one for Nebraska was Iowa. So,
It was also my
um,
number one for
all right.
Nebraska. So I like it. I think it's a perfect fit. That does finish out Iowa, which I think is the easiest team in the Big Ten, with
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska as their permanent rivals. Okay. We go down to Penn State. If you're Penn State, who's your first choice?
I think Penn State wants a piece of the Buckeyes.
That's right. They want the Buckeyes, 100%. Um, completely agree. They want the Buckeyes. And again, so you keep this Ohio State getting Michigan and Penn State every year, which is a ton of fun.
Oh yeah, and when we get to the ratings portion,
They
you've
love
got
it.
at least your three biggest brands playing each other. So
They're signing off on that in a heartbeat. They're like, yes, you want them. Absolutely. We want that too.
right,
If Penn State didn't choose that, it was getting chosen in a second by Fox, NBC, and CBS.
exactly,
So
exactly.
we go to Purdue's already chosen Indiana. Rutgers, another very weird one.
This
Um,
is weird.
if you're
I
Rutgers,
mean,
who's your first choice?
I would be between either Maryland or Northwestern if I was Rutgers. That is, I mean, I don't know if there's one that makes most sense. Maryland, obviously, they're you know at least on the East Coast. Northwestern is the other. I don't know.
Yeah, so this is where you might break some hearts here. I think Penn State will be on the list as a
Okay.
one. This is where TV might step in and be like, no, 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 no. Penn State's not getting Maryland and Rutgers. Like, no. But I do think that'll be their first choice simply by location.
Okay.
Um, I have Maryland as my second choice. So I think TV, even if you go with my first choice, I think TV is stepping in and saying, we're actually saying no to that because that would round out Penn State's schedule. I like Maryland. I like what you say with Maryland. I think that's an easy, they were the
Rutgers has
outsiders.
my Big Ten correspondent Connor
Okay.
has Maryland as the number one pick
There
for
you go.
Rutgers. I
Easy
hadn't
decision.
referenced it until now, but I just went and looked. So
Perfect. So Maryland, number one, easy choice there. Now everyone's gotten their first preference. Time to switch hats. We are now Fox, NBC, CBS. We want some big matchups. I want to start at the bottom. USC. Give me the Buckeyes every year against USC. Put your two biggest brands together because here's the thing. If you're looking at Ohio State, I can tell you historically who they've played every year. Again, like I said, Illinois is their most played game, 103 games. They're not playing that every year right now. Indiana at 95, Wisconsin at 85. That's the only other school I think I'd like fight for is Ohio State, Wisconsin every year. Would
yeah,
be a great game. But here's the thing. If you start doing that, USC is going to be left with like Rutgers and Maryland. And the
right.
bottom line is we're not bringing in USC and UCLA to have Rutgers and Maryland on the schedule every year. So why
Preach it,
not just
brother.
rip the Band-Aid off and give them the Buckeyes? Welcome to the Big Ten. What are your thoughts?
I think I agree. My only qualm is potentially looking at Ohio State and saying Michigan, Penn State, and USC. But here's the
Oh,
thing.
it's tough.
Here's what I'm going to say. We're already both thinking the same thing with Wisconsin being the next one for Ohio State. Ohio State's going to get 3 tough games. Let's not feel too bad for them because the rest of their schedule is going to be filled with Indiana, Illinois, Maryland, and these other schools when they rotate the 6. So if you're at least telling me that they've got to play 3 legitimate games every year, sign me up. Give
Yes.
them USC, Buckeyes, Trojans. We need this to happen.
I love it. So
Plus,
Ohio
plus
State.
it gives USC legitimacy. Like
Yeah.
they got to play Ohio State every single year.
Yep.
They can't just skate by. So, it's good. It's
And
good
here's
stuff.
the reality. Now, like you and I have grown up Georgia fans. All right. If you told me I have my pick as a Georgia fan, and I'm saying this because Ohio State has this attitude of like we're the best. So like as a school that portrays you being the best, if you ask me who I want on my schedule every year, I'm not going to say Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and South Carolina. I'm going to say give me Florida, give me Auburn, and you know what? Give me Bama. Let's see them every year. Like,
Yeah.
let's do it. I think if you're Ohio State, you're saying bring it. Like, welcome to the SEC. Like, if you told me as a Georgia fan, you get to play Oklahoma every year, I'm like, that's awesome. Bring it on. Like, and if you're a
Texas.
fan, you're
Yeah.
buying season tickets. Like, that's selling tickets. So I don't think if you're an Ohio State fan, you're mad about it, other than competitive balance.
You
But I
want to know what
think
my Big Ten guy says?
what's
He
that?
thinks USC. He obviously has UCLA, and his other 2 are Nebraska and Rutgers. Talk about snoozing. We've got to put Ohio State in there.
Yeah,
So
got to give them a big boy game. Welcome to the Big Ten. That brings us to UCLA. And what better way to welcome UCLA to the Big Ten than to give them Michigan? I mean, come on.
let me
Uh,
let me just make sure we're not missing anything for Michigan. Nope,
so here's the thing.
they've got the game and they've got little brother. I think they're good with taking on UCLA.
And they're good. And again, this is where the Big Ten's tough because you're going to lose some big games. Minnesota, Michigan's been played 104 times. Sorry. Like that game's, I don't even think they play that every year now because they don't have permanent opponents in the Big Ten.
No.
Anyway, but yeah, I think with both these new schools, see, this is unlike Oklahoma and Texas because Texas comes in already has a rival built in, as does Oklahoma and Missouri and Texas A&M. These two schools have no rivals built in coming into this conference. So
Oh
give them
yeah,
the
because
big
it's a
boys.
regional. I mean, it's a snafu. It's completely, you got two West Coast teams joining the Midwest, so it don't make a lot of sense. You got to kind of mix them in yourself.
USC and Ohio State, and then UCLA, Michigan, is why Fox, NBC, and CBS paid $1 billion for this TV contract,
If
right?
not, I was going to say UCLA, Penn State. I
I
think
also
that
thought
that
about
would
that
be
one.
fine. So, but I don't think they should get Penn State and Michigan. So I'm good with either one. They definitely need to get that next tier, then the next one after Ohio State, though. So either Michigan or Penn State for UCLA.
Let's give Michigan. I have another
Let's do
idea
it.
for Penn State. That's my
Oh, saving it. That's fine.
okay. Let's give. Oop, wrong school. All right, so Michigan's now finished with Ohio State, Michigan State, and UCLA. Fun.
Hold on. Park it. Park it. That uniform matchup, Michigan,
Oh yeah.
UCLA. Talk to me about it a little bit.
I mean, when it's at Michigan, I think that's the best combo of it because I think UCLA's. I mean, Michigan's home uniform. We're gonna have to do an episode of best uniforms in football, but it's up there with the Maze
That's a good one.
pants. For the love of God, with the Maze pants.
And
Uh,
then which you like Ohio State and USC's away uniforms more, right?
yes, both of
Because
them.
I
I
was
like
gonna
their away
say,
uniform better,
okay, which
but
one
it's
looks better
still.
though? Whose home jersey is better? Is it USC?
I think that game being played at USC is the best uniform matchup.
Is the best uniform? Okay,
Yeah.
I just had to scratch that itch. It was itching
Yeah.
me, so I know it was somewhere
Oh
deep
yeah.
in you. So, but we'll come back. We'll definitely do a uniform episode, especially with these new fun matchups that we're gonna
Oh,
eventually talk about.
100%.
But
We'll have to have a special each week on the pod during the regular season of like best uniform matchup of the week to highlight.
ooh, y'all, we're producing our future shows on our current show. This is
It's
why you come.
February.
So
That's so
you're
funny.
welcome.
Okay, we're going back up. Rutgers. If you we're skipping them because we're TV right now. We're going up to Nebraska. Nebraska gonna get some eyes. I think if you're going like who do they want? They've already got Iowa. And I think who they want and would get a lot of eyes on it, it would be a good game. I think they want Wisconsin. And I think TV is giving a stamp on that. What do you think?
I think so too. And my Big Ten correspondent has that as their
Yeah.
second choice is
Okay.
Wisconsin after Iowa. So
Love it.
we're doing well so far.
That does wrap up Wisconsin with Minnesota, Iowa, and Nebraska. All right. Michigan State. Give them Penn State.
Yeah.
Like that's a rivalry already. There's a trophy. That one is a weird trophy. It's like a pig or something. Yeah, it's weird. But those are great, two great, like I say, please don't kill me, fans of these schools. Tier 1.5/2 teams like behind Ohio State and Michigan that are
They're
like
both
wanting a seat at the table.
afterthoughts.
Yeah.
They're both afterthoughts for, the Big Ten. And they could be, in special years, the best team in the conference. But, Michigan State's always going to be second fiddle to Michigan. Penn State, to a certain extent, is always going to be second fiddle to Ohio State and Michigan, depending upon, classification. So,
And if you're Penn State, unless you're giving them, there's one spot left, unless you're giving them USC or UCLA, it's really the next biggest school, I guess Nebraska. But I kind of like Michigan State. Thoughts?
I'm good with it.
Let's do it. Michigan State goes to Penn State. Penn State
And
goes to
that
Michigan
was
State.
that was Connor, aka our Big Ten correspondent, via Twitter. His second one for Penn State was, or for Michigan State was Penn State. So
There you go. Perfect. All right, going back up. Illinois, second game. I mean, we just given them like a Purdue, an Indiana. Those are border states right there. They're both in Indiana. Who are you giving Illinois?
Yeah, I was looking at this. Our boy likes Ohio State to play Illinois because we talked about how long that rivalry's gone. Obviously, Ohio State is unavailable because we
Yeah,
have them playing USC. He also has Purdue listed as one of their
let's do
rivals, and
Purdue.
I agree the Indiana aspect as well. Both of those could be just kind of a natural fit for Illinois. So I'm definitely good with going ahead and putting Purdue. If we want to put Indiana later, or go ahead and do it.
Let's
I
give them
like
both.
those.
Let's
Let's
just give
do
them
it.
both. So Indiana and Purdue. And then y'all are both getting a little bit of Illinois.
Yep.
Okay. Now we just have Rutgers and Northwestern. And what a great pair of schools to put up against each other.
Yeah, for sure.
That, or I'm looking at what else I had on here. Indiana, you could give Rutgers as far as like proximity. It's close to Northwestern.
Yeah. Well, you still have Indiana available, and
Yeah, let's do that.
Rutgers. I have Rutgers on our list with our Big Ten guy
Well,
likes
perfect.
Indiana and Rutgers. So
Love it. So then Northwestern, who are we giving Northwestern's second game to? We've got Maryland, Michigan State, Minnesota, Nebraska, Purdue. Uh,
so he, I don't
Rutgers.
want to just go only with what he's got, but he likes Purdue with Northwestern.
Northwestern. So I have on my preferences Illinois, which they have, Indiana, and Purdue. So Indiana isn't available. Yeah, Purdue. Let's do it. The Northwestern, you get a little bit of Purdue. Okay. I'm coming in with TV contract again. And I'm saying we got UCLA and USC left still with a game. And I see two big brands on my board. I see Michigan State and Nebraska. So competitive balance wise, do we care about USC and UCLA, or are we saying $1 billion on the table? Then again, it would be hilarious to watch them go play like an away game at Rutgers. But I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I did see Northwestern UCLA mentioned,
Okay.
but I'm good with if we're wanting to. Nebraska and Michigan State definitely carry more weight to go with the USC UCLA. I'm just trying to look at what it's doing because they're playing each other and then they're playing either Michigan or Ohio State. Uh, so
I'll say this: Maryland. I don't have a team left that I think they'd want. My top three were Penn State, Rutgers, and Ohio State. They've got two of those. Michigan State. I had Michigan, Penn State, and Indiana. They're not getting Indiana. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, which is off the board. Nebraska. Actually, I had USC on Nebraska's list, believe it or not, as far as like if you just want eyeballs and season tickets.
yeah, I have Nebraska and USC from our Big Ten guy. So let's do it.
You know what's funny is that's actually the closest proximity school to both USC and UCLA.
Oh wow.
Is Nebraska. Yep, that's what we're getting, the new Big Ten. Okay. I mean, how about UCLA and Michigan State or Minnesota?
UCLA and Michigan State, great basketball
Oh yeah,
schools.
that's
So maybe let's throw them together.
easy money. Uh, okay, we've got Maryland, Minnesota, Northwestern, or Rutgers left. I think what makes the most sense would
Well, you
be
have to split them up because Maryland.
because Maryland's already played Rutgers, so
Yeah, so
that's funny.
Northwestern plays Rutgers.
Maryland plays
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
Okay, that was tough. That I think this one's more difficult outside of like your permanent rivals, like your bona fide rivalry games, because
Yeah.
USC and UCLA have zero ties. Like the Oklahoma Texas is much easier because of the ties. This one's more difficult. People are going to be unhappy.
Yeah, I think anyone who has anything to do with USC, UCLA, and they're dropping one of their, rivals that they want to play every year. But again, you've mentioned a couple of times some of these still aren't played every year anyways, and the rotations of the 3-6 model where you're going to play six rotating every year from everybody else. I think that that's going to ultimately maintain a lot of the pomp and circumstance that comes along with the Big Ten brand in and of itself. So I think what we did was fine. Um, UCLA and USC had to play somebody, and if you could pick, obviously they're going to play each other, and let's mix up some of our bigger brands. I like it.
And Ohio State is the biggest value as far as eyes in college football. Like they get the most viewers of any team in college football. So if I'm again getting $1 billion TV contract, like this had to be in the contract already been signed. But if you're telling me the team that has the most eyes is getting Michigan, Penn State, and USC every year,
well, yes. Add to it, the whole reason they made this deal was for Los Angeles eyes.
Yep.
So Los Angeles market.
That's a good point.
Plus Ohio State. So, and if you're talking about the Los Angeles market, no offense to UCLA because they are definitely a part of that, but USC is the brand of the two.
Brand. Yeah.
And they're gonna, they sell out every game. I say every game. They sell out more games than UCLA. They have better attendance, all that kind of stuff. And when USC's cooking, they're cooking. So I think it makes sense to pair specifically those two together. Money in and of itself, I would almost venture to say USC more so than Ohio State playing Penn State. That's kind of that level when you're talking about TV money, what makes the most sense. So, but you're nail on the head as far as Ohio State being the most important TV brand, and then potentially the most important TV, region is Los Angeles. So, really bringing that to the forefront. I think this might, do something really important for college football on the West Coast, having that as a regular game.
To review, if you're listening on podcast, Illinois has Northwestern, Indiana, and Purdue. Indiana has Purdue, Illinois, and Rutgers. Iowa has Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. Maryland has Penn State, Rutgers, and Minnesota. Michigan has Ohio State, Michigan State, and UCLA. Michigan State has Michigan, Penn State, and UCLA. Minnesota has Wisconsin, Iowa, and Maryland. Nebraska has Iowa, Wisconsin, and USC. Welcome to the Big Ten. Once again, Nebraska. Northwestern has Illinois, Purdue, and Rutgers. Ohio State has Michigan, Penn State, and USC. Please let this happen. Penn State has Ohio State, Maryland, and Michigan State. Purdue has Indiana, Illinois, and Northwestern. Rutgers has Maryland, Indiana, Northwestern. UCLA has USC, Michigan, and Michigan State. USC has UCLA, Ohio State, and Nebraska. And Wisconsin has Minnesota, Iowa, and Nebraska. I like this. I was nervous when we finished it because I felt like Maryland, Minnesota felt weird. After reading the whole thing, I'm like, I love both these lists, Daniel.
Yeah, I think the important thing is this. I think this even feels. I feel like everybody has at least two opponents that they would prefer.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I think it's even more so than the SEC, even though that rivalry fits naturally. I think, we talked about Mississippi State and, those kind of – there's like one or two schools where we felt like, okay, we might be pushing a little bit, where they only have one preferred, rival that they would have picked. But nature of both areas. So this is exciting. I'm excited to see what comes of this. Hopefully we get something very similar to what we just did. You're welcome, Big Ten and SEC. You could just –
we figured it out.
Follow the Extra Point Pod at the Extra Point Pod on Instagram and Facebook and on YouTube, and you'll be able to check out our graphics there.
Nailed it. Yeah, we can already make the graphic pretty for you. You can just steal it, post it in like May when you want to announce this. If you want to announce it in May, that'd be great. March even would be great. Would love to see this. Can't wait to see it. But that'll do it for this edition of The Extra Point. Like he said, be sure to follow us on social, and you can follow him on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. That'll do it for this edition of The Extra Point. He's Daniel. I'm Jacob.